The first time I realized how quiet the world could become was on a rainy Tuesday afternoon during junior year of high school. It was the kind of cold, gray day that makes everything feel slightly heavier, as if the sky itself is pushing down on your shoulders. I had been dealing with a mild earache for a few days, nothing dramatic, just an annoying throb behind my eardrums that pulsed whenever I bent down or turned too quickly. I thought it was nothing, a seasonal allergy, maybe a bit of water from showering too quickly before school. But halfway through biology class, the pain sharpened into something vicious, a hot electric stab that shot from my ears into the back of my skull. The teacher's voice distorted, stretching out like a warped record. My vision flickered. By the time I stood up to ask for the nurse's office, everything around me sounded like it was underwater. Students were moving their mouths, but their voices faded in and out like distant echoes. And then, within minutes, the world went completely silent. The school nurse called my parents, and my mom rushed in with panic written all over her face. I could tell she was speaking, her mouth moved fast enough, but I heard nothing. Not even a faint hum. The silence wrapped itself around me like a thick blanket, smothering, overwhelming, strangely peaceful at the same time. In the emergency room, doctors examined me with urgency, shining lights into my ears, asking questions I couldn't hear, scribbling notes I couldn't read. They finally diagnosed me with a severe double ear infection that had caused swelling around the auditory nerves. Temporary hearing loss, the doctor mouthed. He said it might last a few days, maybe a couple of weeks. My mom hugged me, and I felt the vibration of her sob, but not the sound. For the first week, I felt trapped inside my own skull. I didn't know how to communicate effectively. My family shouted slowly at me as if volume mattered, even though the doctors had clearly told them it wouldn't help. My father exaggerated every word with dramatic lip movements, which honestly made him look like he was performing a bad comedy sketch. My mom wrote everything down on sticky notes, leaving them all over the house like fragile breadcrumbs of communication. My sister, Emma, barely made an effort. She would just wave her hands vaguely, then walk away if I didn't understand. She was already too busy being the brilliant daughter, the one with perfect grades, perfect friends, and perfect plans. I was the quiet one, the average one, the one who didn't stand out. Being deaf only made me more invisible. But something unexpected began to happen. After the initial frustration faded, I started paying attention to people, not their voices, but their expressions, their posture, the subtle shifts in their faces when they thought I couldn't hear. Without sound, the world became a different kind of theater. I learned to read lips out of necessity, but very quickly, it stopped being a skill and became a secret doorway. People forgot I could see their words. They forgot that silence doesn't make someone stupid. The first time I caught someone saying something they shouldn't have, it was an accident. My best friend Sarah had come over to cheer me up. She sat beside me on the couch, scrolling on her phone. My mom brought us snacks and talked loudly at me from the doorway. After my mom left, Sarah leaned toward her phone screen and mouthed, "Oh my God, this is exhausting. She's so needy lately. I can't deal with this." I stared at her for a long moment, my mind frozen in a type of stillness I had never felt before. Sarah didn't even look up. She had no idea her words had landed inside me like a knife. I wanted to confront her, but I didn't. Instead, I pretended I hadn't seen a thing. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Over the next several days, I started noticing more things. Small things at first, almost meaningless. My biology teacher sighed hopeless under his breath when he saw my homework packet. A girl from my math class rolled her eyes dramatically while writing a note about me. One of my cousins whispered, "She's so dramatic," at a family gathering. All of these tiny comments should have stung, but strangely, they didn't. Not in the way insult normally hurts. Instead, they sparked something cold and curious inside me. A question I had never considered. What would people say if they believed I couldn't hear them? That question became the seed of everything that followed. When my hearing began returning, slowly, faintly, like someone turning up the volume. On a dead radio, I didn't tell anyone. Every day, the world became a little less muted. By the end of the second week, I could hear almost perfectly again. And I kept it a secret. It wasn't a plan at first. It wasn't revenge. It was curiosity, dark, irresistible curiosity. I didn't trust the world that had revealed itself in whispers and mouthed insults. And I wanted to know the truth. So I let everyone think I was still deaf. I acted confused when people spoke to me, exaggerated my lip-reading efforts, pretended not to react to sudden noises or slamming doors. I rehearsed the role of silence until I wore it like a second skin. And the more silent I became, the louder the world grew. My parents were the earliest shock. I always thought they loved me unconditionally. That's what parents are supposed to do, right? Instead, I found out they loved the idea of me, the quiet, manageable daughter who didn't ask for much. At dinner, when they thought I wasn't paying attention, they mouthed things like, "She's falling behind in everything. It's probably just a phase. She'll never be like Emma." Sometimes my father would shake his head slowly, his jaw tight with disappointment, as if he was tired of carrying the burden of a defective child. My mom's lips would purse in a thin, hard line that said more than any spoken insult. But nothing hurt as much as the night I overheard Emma. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her boyfriend, Nate. They were studying, laughing, shining like the golden couple they were destined to be. I sat in the living room, pretending to work on homework but secretly watching their lips in the reflection of the microwave door. Nate glanced over at me and mouthed, "Is she always like this?" He gestured toward me with a dismissive flick of his hand. Emma laughed. Actually laughed. Pretty much. My parents baby her because she's the disappointment. They've given up on her being successful like me. Doesn't that bother you? Are you kidding? Nate mouthed. It makes your life easier. Emma smirked. Exactly. They expect so much from me already. At least with her around, I look even better. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The girl I had admired my entire life, the sister whose shadow I willingly lived in, had just carved me open like I was nothing more than a prop in her story. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I made my decision. If people were going to show me who they truly were in silence, I was going to watch, and I was going to record every second. The first night I decided to record my family, the house felt colder than usual. Maybe it was only my imagination, or maybe it was the weight of the truth I had discovered, truths that had cracked something inside me that I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while my mind replayed Emma's words, slicing me open again and again with the same sharp precision. They baby her because she's the disappointment. I kept hearing those words even though my sister never actually said them out loud. It was strange how silent cruelty could still echo louder than anything spoken. When the house finally settled into its nighttime quiet, when the dishwasher stopped humming and my parents retreated to their bedroom, I quietly slid out of bed. My phone felt heavy in my hand, like holding the beginning of something irreversible. I went to the hallway outside my parents' room and pretended to be wandering half asleep in confusion. I made just enough noise that they would assume I couldn't hear myself. And they did. The moment my footsteps passed their bedroom door, the murmurs began inside. At first, I didn't understand the soft movements of their mouths, the way their eyebrows lifted, the way their expressions tightened. They spoke quietly, thinking I was far enough away. When I pressed record and lifted the phone just enough, I finally caught a few mouthed phrases. "She's awake again," my mom whispered to my dad. "She's been so slow lately," my dad responded. "It's because of everything," she replied. All this stress on top of her disability. Disability. That word wrapped around me like poison. I held my breath and stayed still, letting the recording run. My hands were trembling, not with fear, but with something colder, heavier. A sense of betrayal that dug deeper each time my parents spoke about me like I was a burden they were forced to carry. I had never thought of myself as perfect, but I never imagined they saw me as broken. When I returned to my room, I replayed the video again and again, watching the silent insults unfold. It was surreal. If I had never lost my hearing, I never would have known any of this. The thought haunted me. By the end of the night, something inside me hardened. I would collect evidence. Not because I planned revenge, not yet, but because I needed the truth to be undeniable. Because once you see people clearly, you never look at them the same again. Over the next few weeks, I perfected the art of being deaf. I learned how to keep my face blank in every situation, how to swallow the instinctual reactions that sound normally triggers, turning toward a door slam, flinching at a dropped plate, reacting when someone laughed too loudly. My silence had to be believable. Eventually, people simply accepted it. My teachers stopped calling on me. My classmates stopped trying to include me. My sister ignored me entirely unless she needed something from my room. Silence made me invisible, and invisibility made me powerful. I started filming dinners from my lap, capturing the subtle cruelty shared between my parents when they thought I wasn't paying attention. I recorded my grandmother whispering to my mother at family gatherings. It's such a shame. She used to be so promising. I filmed Sarah and Jessica at school, mouthing to each other about how sad and boring I had become. I never reacted. I never let myself show even a flicker of recognition. Every night, I stored the videos in a hidden folder on my laptop. I labeled each file with a date and a description. April 9th, Mom calling me a burden. April 14th, Sarah saying she's tired of pretending to care. April 23rd, Grandma saying she's embarrassed to introduce me. April 28th, Dad saying they should start saving for Emma instead. The list grew slowly but steadily, like a disease spreading across the screen. But the most important footage came on a night when Emma brought her boyfriend over again. I heard their laughter first, real, carefree, sharp enough to cut through walls. I positioned myself at the dining table with a notebook open, pretending to focus on homework. My phone sat against a water bottle, camera pointed perfectly toward the kitchen. Emma's boyfriend asked, "Does she even try anymore?" Emma shrugged, mouthing, "Mom and Dad don't expect anything from her now." Then she leaned in closer, her lips forming the sentence that would replay in my head for months. "Honestly, having a disabled sister makes my life easier." There it was. The thing she had hinted at before, but now said openly, without hesitation. And I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I didn't even let myself breathe too loudly. Because I needed her to keep talking. She did. "My parents are already planning to move the college fund entirely toward me," she mouthed. "Med school is expensive. She won't need it." Those words hit me like a punch. Not because of the money, although that hurt, but because use of the clarity they revealed. My family didn't just pity me. They were planning their lives around the assumption that I would never amount to anything, that I was disposable. That was the night I realized something vital. They weren't just talking about me. They were planning for a future without me. A future where I wasn't a daughter, a sister, or even a person, just an obligation that would eventually be handed off to government programs and pity checks. That night, after they went upstairs, I sat alone in the dark living room. The house was silent, the type of silence that feels heavy, like it's pressing your ribs inward. I stared at the recorded video on my phone, watching Emma smile, actually smile, while saying things that carved pieces out of me. But something was different now. For the first time since this entire thing started, the silence didn't suffocate me. It sharpened me. Over the next year, my recordings became more strategic. I didn't just wait for things to happen. I created opportunities. I would linger in rooms longer than necessary, knowing someone would mouth something to someone else. I would accidentally stand near half-closed doors where whispers drifted. I would pretend to misunderstand conversations, prompting teachers or counselors to vent to each other about how difficult I was. My guidance counselor was one of the worst offenders. One afternoon, I walked into her office for a scheduled meeting. She smiled warmly in front of me, mouthed slowly, "Your grades are fine for someone in your situation." But when I stepped out and quietly stood near the corner by the water cooler, she laughed to a colleague. "She's a lost cause. No ambition. No motivation. Honestly, I don't know why her parents try so hard." I pressed record. Of course I did. People revealed their true selves when they believed I had no access to their voices. It was like removing a mask from every person I had ever trusted. At first, all this truth hurt. It felt like poison dripping slowly into my veins. But over time, the pain became something else, something colder, more controlled. Anger, determination, purpose. Because if everyone believed I was broken, weak, and incapable, then I had nothing left to lose by proving them wrong. One night, sitting alone in my room surrounded by folders of recordings and screenshots and notes, I realized I had accidentally created something massive. Not just a collection of secrets, not just proof of cruelty. A mirror. A mirror showing who my family truly was, not the loving, supportive household I once thought I had, but carefully constructed illusion built on pressure, favoritism, and quiet prejudice. It was then that the idea first appeared, quietly, faintly, like a whispered thought in the dark. Someday, I was going to show them everything. all at once. Every word, every lie, every betrayal. And they would finally hear me. I didn't know when or how yet, but I knew the moment was coming. Living a double life was nothing like the dramatic thrillers I used to watch as a kid. Those movies made deception look elegant, almost glamorous, full of clever disguises and last-second escapes. In reality, pretending to be deaf while simultaneously listening to every whispered insult and secret was exhausting in a way I had never imagined. It required precision, discipline, and a level of emotional numbness that I had to build piece by piece. Every day became a test of control over my face, my reactions, my breathing, my heartbeat. I had to pretend not to flinch when someone dropped a tray in the cafeteria. I had to force myself not to laugh when a teacher said something unintentionally funny. I had to train myself to let the world pass through me without acknowledging it. But the hardest part was pretending I didn't hear the words meant to break me. By the middle of senior year, I had perfected the performance so completely that even I sometimes forgot what it felt like to speak freely. Silence became both my shield and my prison. When classmates walked past me, they spoke openly about me as if I were furniture, visible, yet irrelevant. Teachers whispered about my limitations, my future challenges, my emotional fragility. Everywhere I went, people constructed a version of me that I never chose to be. A helpless girl, a fragile sister, a pitiful disappointment. That version of me was an illusion, but I let it grow. Because every false assumption they made became another piece of evidence. Yet with every passing week, the weight of the things I heard carved deeper into me. I remember one afternoon in particular, a freezing January day, when the hallways smelled like wet jackets and cheap cafeteria pizza. I was walking to the restroom when I heard two girls from my math class whispering near the lockers. "She looks so sad all the time," one of them said. "No," the other replied instantly. "She just looks blank. Like she's not even there. I don't teach. Think she feels anything." Those words burned. They were wrong, of course. I felt everything. But they believed I felt nothing. And that made them bold. At home, the double life became even more complicated. My parents had settled comfortably into the role of caretakers of a disabled daughter. They whispered about doctor appointments, special accommodations, new routines that might help me feel more capable. They spoke softly about my future, always with the same tone people use when discussing a damaged piece of furniture. Carefully, gently, but with a quiet certainty that it will never be restored. My father took on an almost saintly patience, at least on the surface. He'd give me long, pitying looks, as if I were made of glass. But I recorded what happened after I left the room, the way he'd sigh heavily, rubbing his temples as he mouthed, "I can't keep doing this." My mother, for her part, stopped trying to connect with me emotionally, and instead focused on logistics, schedules, routines, medications I didn't need, but she insisted on giving me just to be safe. She became the manager of my supposed disability, not the mother of a daughter. Emma, however, thrived in this new world. With every assumption my parents made about my limitations, her pedestal grew taller. She became more confident, more celebrated, more adored. Colleges flooded her inbox. Teachers praised her constantly. Relatives boasted about her achievements. She lived in the glow of being the successful child while I became the shadow that made her shine brighter. She didn't hide her pride. She didn't hide her cruelty either. One night, I walked into the hallway just in time to see Emma leaning against the kitchen counter while my mother prepared dinner. My phone was already recording in my sleeve. Emma mouthed casually, "Maybe we should start saving money for a care home. She won't be independent." My mother nodded, tired and resigned. "Maybe so." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they thought I couldn't care for myself, but because they were planning to discard me entirely. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow, letting the tears soak silently into the fabric so no one would hear. I didn't cry because I was weak. I cried because I had discovered a truth so devastating that my body needed some way to release it. My parents didn't just think I was incapable. They were planning a life without me. They didn't see me as a daughter anymore. I was becoming a responsibility they wanted to eliminate. But even through the pain, something else slowly grew inside me. Not all. Es omitting kolda. Purpose. Plan. Balancing my real self with my silent persona required a ruthlessness I didn't know I had. Every day at school, I ran the deception flawlessly. But at night, alone in my room, I worked. I studied harder than I ever had. Not because I wanted to impress anyone. No one thought I could achieve anything anyway. But because I wanted to build a future they couldn't ruin. If they weren't going to give me access to the college fund, I would earn my own way. If they weren't going to support me, I would build a life without them. And if they were planning to erase me from their future, I decided I would erase myself from theirs first. I applied to scholarships they didn't know existed. I emailed professors at universities I had researched late into the night. I studied lip-reading techniques, psychology articles, and behavioral science through bootleg PDFs. I taught myself resilience through necessity. Silence didn't break me. It sharpened me. One evening, while scrolling through scholarship lists, I found a program specifically for students who overcame adversity. Ironically, a scholarship for which everyone assumed I qualified because of my disability. It felt twisted to even consider it, but then I reminded myself, I wasn't exploiting a disability. I was exposing the world that created one for me. By the end of senior year, I had been accepted into a university 3 states away, quietly, secretly, without ever telling my family. They thought I couldn't even hear. They had no idea I was already halfway out the door. But even with my escape plan forming, something darker was happening inside me. I was beginning to enjoy the silence. Not because I liked being isolated, but because silence revealed everything. I knew who people really were. I knew who cared, who pretended, who hated, who pitied, who used me. I had seen behind every mask. Silence gave me access to the truth. And the truth connected into something much bigger than just them being cruel. The more recordings I collected, the more I saw a pattern. My family wasn't just flawed. They were fundamentally dishonest people. They lied to each other just as easily as they lied about me. My parents gossiped about relatives they hugged in public. My grandmother pretended to love Emma but secretly criticized her. My teachers insulted each other behind closed doors. My friends talked about me when I left the room and then asked for favors the next day. The world didn't just have sharp edges. It had rot beneath the surface. And I had 3 years of evidence. The deception was deep, yes, but it didn't destroy me. It rebuilt me piece by piece into someone who no longer needed anyone's approval, especially not from the people who had broken me quietly. The morning arrived slower than usual, as if the sun itself hesitated to rise over a world full of unanswered questions. Maya woke up with her thoughts tangled like vines. She had dreamed again. This time the stone wasn't glowing, it was whispering. She remembered the faint sound, like distant voices calling her name, fading before she could grasp a single word. She sat up, pressing her fingers gently against her temples, wondering if the dreams were just dreams anymore or something far more real. The room was quiet, but a strange heaviness rested in the air, as if the house itself was holding its breath. She slipped out of bed and opened the curtains. Outside, the world looked normal, sunlight filling the yard, the old tree swaying softly, bird hopping along the fence. But something in the stillness felt wrong. Even the breeze carried a colder touch, brushing against her skin with an unfamiliar weight. Maybe I'm overthinking, she whispered to herself, though she knew she wasn't. Ever since the stone came into their lives, nothing had felt the same. Every day felt like a step deeper into a forest where the path grew thinner until it disappeared completely. Downstairs, Zara sat at the table with her chin on her hands, staring at the stone placed between them. The blue glow was faint now, weaker than before, as if the stone itself had grown tired. Lucas stood by the window, arms crossed, his eyes sharp and thoughtful. He wasn't one to panic easily, but even he couldn't hide the anxiety simmering under his calm expression. When Maya entered, both of them turned to her like they had been waiting. It changed again, Zara said quietly, her voice trembling. Last night it was bright. Now it's fading. Why would it do that? Maya took a chair and sat down slowly, her gaze locked on the stone. Because something else is happening, she said, though she didn't know what that something was. She could feel it, something moving, shifting, pushing at the edges of their world. Presence. A disturbance. The dreams, the lights, the voices, they weren't coincidences. They were pieces of a puzzle they hadn't yet learned how to solve. Lucas stepped closer to the table. I heard something last night, he said, lowering his voice. I thought it was the wind at first. Then I realized it wasn't. It sounded like someone walking right outside the house. Zara's eyes widened. Footsteps. Lucas nodded. Slow. Careful. Like they were trying not to be heard. Maya's heart tightened. She remembered waking briefly in the night, a faint sound drifting in through her window, soft, rhythmic, easily dismissed as imagination. But now she wasn't so sure. Did you see anything? She asked. No, Lucas replied. When I looked outside, there was nothing. Just darkness. Too much darkness. Silence fell over them. The kind of silence that didn't feel empty, but crowded. Filled with thoughts none of them wanted to speak out loud. Finally, Maya took a deep breath. We need to understand what the stone is trying to tell us, she said. The dreams, the sounds, they're connected. I know they are. Zara leaned back, frustration filling her voice. But how? It's not like we can just ask it questions. It only glows and makes weird noises. It's not giving us answers, just more confusion. But what if the confusion is the message? Lucas said softly. What if it's showing us that something is coming? Something we're not ready for. The thought sent chills down Maya's spine. She didn't want to believe it, but deep down she already knew he was right. There was something coming, something neither human nor familiar. Something old. Before anyone could respond, a sudden thump echoed from outside. Zara jumped. Did you hear that? Lucas moved instantly, his instincts kicking in. Stay here. But Maya stood up too. No. We face this together. They walked toward the front door slowly, every step heavier than the last. The sunlight spilling through the windows felt dimmer now, as if shadows had thickened around the house. Lucas reached for the doorknob, paused, took a breath, and opened it. At first, they saw nothing, just the yard stretching out quietly. Then Maya noticed it. The tree. More specifically, the shadow of the tree. It was moving, not swaying like the branches, not shifting with sunlight, moving on its own. Zara gasped. Lucas froze. Maya felt her heartbeat thundering in her ears. The shadow slid across the ground like it had a mind of its own, curling toward the house in long, stretching tendrils. The air turned colder instantly, a sharp sting brushing against their skin. The stone on the table inside began humming loudly. Zara whispered shakily. What is that? Maya didn't know. But the stone's hum grew stronger, vibrating through the hull. Used like a warning siren. The shadow crept closer, the edges rippling unnaturally. It wasn't one shadow, it was many. Layers inside layers. Shapes within shapes. Something buried deep within them seemed to stir, as if waking after a long sleep. Lucas stepped in front of the girls instinctively. Get back inside, he said. But when they tried, the door suddenly slammed shut by itself, locking them out. The stone's hum grew louder. The shadows grew closer. And then a voice whispered, soft, broken, sorrowful. Return it. Maya stumbled back. Who said that? The shadows twitched, reforming into a new shape, something tall, vaguely human, but distorted, as if stitched together from pieces of darkness itself. The figure flickered like a dying flame, bending in unnatural angles. Its voice came again, drifting through the cold air like a forgotten memory. Return what was taken. Zara's breath faltered. The stone, she whispered. It wants the stone. But before they could even think, the stone inside the house blazed with sudden light, bursting through the windows with a shockwave of blue energy. The shadow figure recoiled, twisting violently as if burned. The light intensified, cracking the air like thunder. The figure dissolved, breaking apart into streams of smoke that spiraled upward until they vanished completely. Silence rushed back in. The tree stood still again. The shadows lay normal and quiet against the ground. The cold air warmed slightly, but nothing felt normal. Lucas ran to the door and forced it open. Inside, the stone lay on the floor, the table knocked over, the glow fading rapidly like a flame out of breath. Maya picked it up carefully. It felt warm, too warm, as if alive. We need answers, she said, her voice trembling with determination. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't here to hurt us. It was trying to get the stone back. Zara swallowed hard. Then why did it look so terrifying? Because, Maya whispered, staring at the fading stone, not everything that's lost knows how to come home gently. The stone pulsed once, weakly, like a heartbeat fading. Lucas exhaled slowly. This is only the beginning, he said. And they all knew he was right. Something ancient had awakened. Something searching. Something broken. And coming straight for them. The night settled heavy over the town, wrapping everything in a silence that felt too deep, too deliberate. It was the kind of night in which even the crickets dared not sing, as if nature itself sensed something watching from beyond the edges of the world. Inside the dimly lit living room, Maya, Zara, and Lucas sat together, the stone resting in the center of the table like the heart of a sleeping creature. Its glow had weakened to a faint pulse, soft and uneven, as though whatever life it held was slipping away by the minute. Lucas leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the stone with eyes full of frustration and responsibility. "We can't just wait for something else to show up," he said, voice low. "We need to figure out what this thing is and how to control it. Otherwise, that shadow, or something worse, is going to come back." Zara hugged her knees to her chest, her voice trembling. "But where do we even start? We don't know anything. We don't know where it came from, who it belongs to, or why it chose us." Maya looked at her sister, then at the stone, feeling a strange pull deep inside her, like the stone was calling to something inside her soul. She didn't know how to explain the instinct, but she felt it so strongly that ignoring it made her stomach twist. "I think the dreams are connected to it," she said softly. "It's been trying to tell us something. The voices, the lights. I don't think they're random." Lucas turned to her sharply. "Dreams? What dreams?" Maya hesitated. She hadn't told him everything before. Not the whispers, not the strange symbols she saw when she closed her eyes, not the feeling of being watched by something ancient and wounded. "I've been seeing things at night," she said. "The stone speaks. Not with words, but with images. Places, sounds, shapes. Like it's showing me pieces of its past." Zara's eyes widened. "Maya, why didn't you tell us?" "Because I thought I was imagining it," Maya whispered. "But after what we saw, Ode, I know it's real." Before they could say more, the stone suddenly flickered, once, twice, and then released a faint shimmer of light that stretched across the table, spreading like a thin sheet of water. Maya gasped as the light climbed up her arm the moment she touched it, sending a warm pulse through her veins. She didn't pull away. Something deep inside her told her not to. The light expanded, forming thin, glowing lines that curved and twisted, weaving themselves into a shape suspended above the table. Zara covered her mouth, stunned. Lucas stood slowly, his eyes wide with astonishment. A map. A floating, breathing, shimmering map. But it wasn't a map of their town, or their country, or anything familiar. The lines twisted like rivers of light through vast forests of shadow, stretching across mountains that didn't exist on Earth. Symbols glowed faintly, spirals, jagged marks, circles inside circles, all arranged in patterns that made no logical sense, yet felt purposeful. The map pulsed in rhythm with the stone, as though they were one living thing. "What is that?" Lucas whispered. Maya swallowed hard. "It's the place from my dreams." Zara leaned in, eyes filled with wonder and fear. "You've seen this before?" "Not exactly," Maya said, "but parts of it. The spiral symbol, the ridge of mountains, the broken circle. They've shown up again and again." Lucas pointed at one of the glowing marks. "Does the stone want us to go there?" Maya looked closer. The symbol he pointed to was brighter than the rest, pulsing with a slow heartbeat. "That's where the voice is coming from," she said. "The one in my dream. The one calling for help." Zara's brows furrowed. "Help?" "Maya, that shadow creature did not look like it needed help." Maya shook her head. "Not the shadow. Something else. Something trapped. Lost. Calling to us." Lucas stepped back, rubbing his temples. "So let me get this straight. The stone is showing us a map of a place that isn't Earth, filled with symbols Maya sees in her dreams, because something out there is calling for help." "That's exactly what I'm saying," Maya replied. Zara shivered. "But why us? We're just 3 kids. Why would something from another world reach out to us?" The map flickered again, and suddenly the room darkened. The walls dissolved into shadows as the floor beneath them shimmered with shifting light. They weren't moving, but their world was being pulled into something else, visions layered over reality like transparent paintings. A forest of silver trees, a sky with 2 moons, a city of light crumbling under darkness. A figure, tall, robed, glowing fa. Gently reaching out. Maya. The voice echoed through the room, soft but desperate. Zara's breath hitched. Did you hear that? Lucas nodded, stunned. It said your name. Maya felt her chest tighten. It's the same voice from the dream. The glowing figure in the vision stepped forward, but its face was blurred, fractured like shattered glass. Its voice wavered like a fading echo. You must return it before the darkness consumes both worlds. The vision cracked, splintered, and exploded into a burst of blue light. The room snapped back into normal. The map disappeared. The stone went completely dark. For a moment, none of them moved. They simply stared at the now lifeless stone lying silent on the table. Zara whispered, "Both worlds? What does that mean?" Lucas exhaled deeply. "It means whatever this is, it's not just about us. Something big is going on." Maya picked up the stone gently, feeling the warmth fade beneath her fingertips. "The shadow we saw today. Maybe it wasn't evil," she said. "Maybe it was broken, twisted, hurt. Maybe the darkness is spreading, and it's reaching into our world." Zara's voice rose with panic. "So what do we do? What if the darkness comes here again? What if more shadows show up? What if?" Zara, Lucas said firmly. "Calm down. We'll figure it out." Maya stood slowly, her expression full of quiet determination. "The map showed us where to go," she said. "It showed us who needs help. And if we don't go, more shadows will come. More voices will break. More worlds will fall apart." Lucas looked at her carefully. "You're saying we go there? To another world?" Maya nodded. "If the stone opened a doorway before, it can open one again. It wants us to fix something. It chose us for a reason." Zara stared at her in disbelief. "But Maya, that world, it looked dangerous." "Every world is dangerous when it's dying," Maya said softly. Lucas stepped beside her. "If you're going, I'm going." Zara hesitated, fear trembling in her eyes. But she took Maya's hand, squeezing it tightly. "And I'm not letting you go alone." The three of them stood together, united by something far larger than themselves. The stone lay dark and quiet in Maya's hands, but for a brief moment, they felt it stir, like the faintest heartbeat returning. A whisper drifted through the air. Soft, almost too soft to hear. "Hurry." Maya looked at her brother and sister, and for the first time she understood. This wasn't the end of their story. It was only the door. And it had just begun to open. Night wrapped the house like a dark curtain, thick enough to feel against the skin. The world outside seemed frozen. No breeze, no rustle of leaves, no distant hum of cars. Only a stillness that felt unnatural, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Inside Maya's room, a dim lamp cast warm shadows across the walls, flickering gently as though something unseen brushed against the light. Maya sat on the edge of her bed, the stone resting in her palms. It no longer glowed, no longer pulsed, no longer whispered. But she could feel it breathing, faintly, like a creature waiting for its strength to return. She stared at it for a long moment before sighing softly. "You're running out of time," she whispered to it. "And so are we." A knock sounded softly against her door. Maya looked up. "Come in." Lucas slipped inside first, followed by Zara. Both looked tired, nervous, and determined all at once, three emotions they had worn constantly since the day the shadow creature appeared. Lucas sat on her desk chair, turning it to face her. Zara took the spot beside her on the bed. "You okay?" Lucas asked, though he already knew the answer. "No," Maya admitted. "But I know what we have to do." Zara swallowed hard. "You really think the stone can open a portal again? It looks dead now." Maya ran her thumb over the stone's surface. "It's not dead, just weak." Lucas leaned forward. "So how do we recharge it?" Maya hesitated. She didn't want to say it, but she felt the truth inside her bones, as clear as if it had been whispered directly into her heart. "It needs us," she said softly. "Our energy. Our connection." Zara's eyes widened. Like we have to touch it together." "Not just touch," Maya said. "We need to open ourselves to it. Trust it. Let it see us." Lucas frowned. "What does that mean?" "Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. All of it," Maya said. The room went quiet for a long moment, as the magnitude of her words settled over them. Shadows dance along, the walls stretching and shrinking like silent witnesses. Zara exhaled shakily. It's scary. Maya nodded. I know. But whatever's calling for help, whatever is trapped on the other side, it's fading. We have to hurry. Lucas straightened, determination sharpening his features. Then let's do it. Right now. Maya placed the stone between them on the bed. It didn't glow, but the air around it felt heavier, denser, as though the stones sensed their presence. They each reached out slowly, placing one hand on its cool surface. Their fingers brushed against one another, forming a loose circle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the temperature in the room dropped sharply, making Maya's breath fog slightly in the air. The lamp dimmed. The shadows on the walls deepened. The stone warmed under their hands, first a faint hum, then a stronger pulse, like a heartbeat returning after a long sleep. Zara tightened her grip. Oh, God. Stay calm, Lucas said, though his voice trembled. The stone vibrated harder, its pulse matching the rhythm of Maya's heartbeat. Images flickered in the back of her mind. Silver forests, twin moons, the figure trapped in darkness. She felt something reaching out from the stone, searching, gently brushing against her thoughts like fingers made of light. A voice echoed faintly inside her head. You are close, but not enough. Maya gasped softly. It needs more. It needs us to open up fully. Lucas shot her a confused look. Open up how? Maya squeezed her eyes shut. Don't block anything. Let it see your fears, your memories, your truth. Zara shook her head wildly. No, 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 Maya, I can't. What if it sees something I don't want it to? It already sees everything, Maya whispered. It's not trying to hurt us. It wants to trust us. Lucas took a deep, thoughtful breath. Then he nodded. Okay, I'll try. Zara hesitated, then slowly nodded as well. They closed their eyes, and the world fell away. Maya felt weightless, suspended in a space that wasn't a room, wasn't the world, wasn't anything she recognized. Her body dissolved into light, her thoughts stretched like threads pulled gently through water. She could feel Lucas and Zara beside her, not physically, but as glowing presences drifting through the void. Memories swirled around them, echoes of childhood laughter, nights spent crying quietly in their rooms, moments of fear, joy, anger, love. Everything that made them who they were drifted outward like stars. The stone glowed brighter, drinking in their truth. Then a voice, clear this time, spoke from the darkness. You open the door with what you are, not with what you hide. Lucas's presence trembled. Maya sensed something inside him, an old wound, a fear he never voiced. A flash of himself hiding bruises under a jacket, covering for a father's anger. Shame. Silence. Zara's presence flickered, years of feeling overshadowed, unheard, afraid of failure, afraid of being forgotten. And Maya, her deepest fear surged. Forward, the fear of being powerless, of not being enough, of losing everyone she loved as the darkness grew stronger. The voices of all three siblings merged in the void, soft, fragile, human. The stone pulsed once, then twice, then. A tear in space ripped open before them, a blinding crack of silver light slicing through the darkness like lightning. A swirling storm of energy spiraled outward, forming a doorway shaped like a living wound in reality itself. Maya gasped as the world snapped back around them. They were in her room again, but the portal hovered above the bed now, shimmering violently. The air whipped around them, pulling at their clothes, rattling the windows. Zara screamed, clinging to the bed frame. What is that? Lucas shielded her with his arm. The portal. Maya, you did it. It wasn't just me, Maya said breathlessly. It needed all of us. Our truth opened it. The portal roared, expanding wider, revealing flashes of another world beyond. Tall silver trees under twin moons, shattered spires of light, shadows crawling like smoke across the ground. The same world from her dreams. The same world crying for help. The stone glowed brilliantly for one last moment, then exploded into 1,000 tiny shards that dissolved into the air like fireflies. The portal flickered violently. A voice drifted through, faint, trembling, desperate. Maya, hurry. Zara, grab her arm. We aren't seriously going in there, right? Maya, it's not safe. It's not even Earth. Maya held her sister tightly. I know. But that world is dying, and someone there is calling my name. Lucas took a deep breath. Then we go together. No matter what's on the other side. Maya nodded, heart pounding. Together, they stepped toward the portal. The wind roared. The doorway widened. The silver forest glowed on the other side like a dream waiting to collapse. Maya took Zara's hand. Lucas stepped beside them. And the three siblings, bound by fear, truth, and an ancient call, stepped into the light. The portal swallowed them whole. The world vanished behind a soundless flash. And the real journey finally began. It had been 6 years since I walked out of that house, and every day outside their shadow taught me something new. Living alone, I learned to handle money, responsibility, and life's harsh realities without a safety net. No one to catch me if I stumbled. No one to tell me I was doing fine when I wasn't. Every paycheck, every assignment, every decision I owned completely. The taste of independence was bitter and sweet at the same time. Bitter because it reminded me how alone I had been, and sweet because finally, no one's judgments controlled my life. College life was a revelation. Friends who truly cared, mentors who valued my insights, and the freedom to speak without the fear of being judged behind my back. I flourished academically, my professors often noting my maturity beyond my years. My master's in psychology became a natural fit. Every lecture, every case study, every research project reminded me why I had chosen this path, to understand human behavior, to understand cruelty, compassion, and the fine line that separates the two. At first, I documented my feelings, almost as a continuation of the silent diary I kept while pretending to be deaf. Every memory, every betrayal, every lesson found its way onto pages I would never share. Writing became my therapy. I processed each day with honesty, admitting my fears, my loneliness, and occasionally, my relief at having escaped the suffocating environment that had defined my teenage years. Reconnecting with the world. Living independently forced me to reconnect with people in ways I had avoided before. Social interactions, once terrifying, became opportunities for observation, understanding, and genuine connection. I started volunteering at counseling centers, using my experience to help others who had faced neglect, betrayal, or family dysfunction. I found a strange purpose in transforming my pain into guidance for those still trapped in cycles of manipulation or silent suffering. Friends became family. Slow. Why, the empty, distant silence that had been my constant companion evolved into a comforting solitude that I cherished. I was learning to enjoy my own company, discovering that I could be my own source of validation, strength, and love. Emma's shadow lingers. Despite all progress, Emma's shadow remained. News of her struggles in medical school had reached me through mutual acquaintances. I felt neither triumph nor satisfaction, just a quiet observation. Life had humbled her in ways I never wished for anyone, yet it served as a reminder of what it meant to rely on others to define one's worth. I reflected on our relationship often, considering the possibility of reconciliation, but always reminded myself that boundaries were necessary. Healing did not require her presence, just an acceptance of reality. The quiet lessons. By now, I had internalized a critical understanding. People reveal themselves most clearly in moments when they think you are powerless, uninformed, or absent. My years of observation had taught me that kindness is often performative, cruelty often hidden behind smiles, and that true character is revealed not in words spoken to your face but in whispers meant to be unseen. I carried this knowledge not as bitterness but as a protective insight, equipping myself to navigate relationships with clarity, discernment, and compassion. The 7th year after leaving my family home brought an unexpected clarity. The anxiety that had clung to me for years, the fear of whispers, the dread of judgment, had faded into quiet resolve. I had learned to trust myself completely, to rely on my own instincts, and to create a life that was defined by my choices alone, not by the cruelty or neglect of those who had once called themselves my family. Every day, I woke up knowing that freedom comes at a cost, but it is a cost worth paying. The life I had built was mine, untethered to their expectations or manipulations, and that realization carried a power I had never felt before. Academically, I thrived. My master's thesis in psychology, which explored familial dysfunction, betrayal, and emotional neglect, became a personal testament to my own experiences. Every research project, every case study, every lecture reminded me of the lessons I had learned over the years. My time pretending to be deaf had given me an extraordinary perspective on human behavior. I had witnessed cruelty, kindness, and manipulation in their rawest forms, and now I could analyze it, understand it, and use it to help others. Helping patients who had experienced neglect or family abuse became not just a career but a purpose. It was my way of transforming my pain into something meaningful. Emma, my sister, reached out one final time, not through social media or emails, but with a handwritten letter delivered carefully to my mailbox. Her words were honest, raw, and devoid of excuses. She admitted her mistakes, acknowledged the role she had played in my suffering, and reflected on her own life unraveling under pressure. She did not ask for forgiveness, nor did she demand reconciliation. She only wanted me to know that she understood what she had done and that she felt genuine remorse. I read her letter slowly, letting each word sink in. For the first time, I truly saw Emma not as the golden child who had mocked me, but as a human being grappling with her own failures and flaws. I placed the letter in my drawer and made peace. Closure did not require her presence. It existed because I had survived, grown, and chosen my own path. My parents attempted one last approach to re-enter my life. They called, texted, and even showed up unannounced, driven by desperation and guilt. But by this time, I understood their motives. Their apologies reflected their desire to assuage their own consciences, not to genuinely acknowledge the pain they had caused me. I agreed to meet them once, in a neutral setting. Their conversation was awkward, filled with justifications and thinly veiled attempts to rationalize past behavior. But I had grown beyond seeking their approval. I listened calmly, responded politely, and then walked away. I understood that family ties alone do not create love, respect, or trust. Real connection comes from mutual care and honesty, qualities they had never demonstrated. Professionally, my life began to flourish. I worked with survivors of neglect, helping them navigate trauma, understand their feelings, and reclaim their identities. Each client reminded me of my own journey, the years I had spent listening, observing, and collecting evidence of hidden cruelty. I never used my experiences for revenge. Instead, I transformed them into empathy, understanding, and guidance. Slowly, the world around me became a place where my past no longer defined me, but informed my ability to help others. I cultivated friendships that were genuine, supportive, and safe. I traveled, explored, and built a home within myself. The silence that had once trapped me became a sanctuary, a space where I could think freely, dream boldly, and reflect without fear. After years of witnessing betrayal, cruelty, and deception, I had internalized a vital truth. People reveal their true selves when they believe you cannot see or hear them. This insight guided every relationship I formed, every boundary I set, and every decision I made. It was a lesson learned through pain, but it was also a shield, allowing me to navigate life with clarity and strength. I had transformed the pain inflicted by my family into wisdom, resilience, and self-respect. One evening, sitting in my sunlit apartment and gazing at the city's skyline, I reflected on how far I had come. My phone rested beside me silent, a reminder of the recordings, the evidence, and the years I had spent observing and surviving. I smiled softly, understanding that the girl who had once pretended to be deaf had evolved into a woman who was strong, independent, and whole. I whispered to myself, I am free. I am seen. I am whole. For the first time, I knew that no past betrayal, no family dysfunction, and no cruelty could ever take that away from me. My life was finally, fully my own.